Prince Harry in tears, not rumors, not whispers, tears, and not because of royal pressure, not because of the media, but because of something far more personal, something from Meghan's past that was never supposed to come out. A secret so explosive that if it were true, it wouldn't just embarrass the royal family, it would rewrite the entire story we thought we knew. For years, the world believed they were fighting the system together, standing against the palace, against the press, against everyone. But what happens when the real storm isn't outside, but inside your own marriage? What happens when the person you defended against the world is suddenly the person hiding the biggest secret of all? Because this story doesn't begin in Montecito. It doesn't begin in London. It doesn't even begin when Meghan met Harry. No, if this story is true, it began decades earlier, long before the royal titles, long before the interviews, long before the carefully crafted image the world was shown. And the most shocking part? The clues may have been there the entire time, hidden in plain sight, ignored, dismissed, or simply buried under a narrative that was too perfect to question. For years, Meghan Markle's life looked like a carefully written movie script. First Hollywood, then royalty, then a dramatic exit, then a new empire in America. Every step looked like a transformation, like a woman constantly reinventing herself and moving to the next level. People called it ambition. People called it courage. People called it a modern fairy tale. But now, some are starting to ask a different question. What if it wasn't a fairy tale? What if it was a strategy? Because behind every public image, there is always a private history. And sometimes that private history doesn't match the public story at all. And strangely, this entire storm didn't start in a palace or a courtroom or a TV interview. It started in a hospital room in 2025. A quiet hospital room in Mexico. Thomas Markle recovering from major heart surgery. Machines beeping. White walls. A man older, weaker, looking at the door more than the doctors. Waiting, hoping, expecting his daughter to walk in. But she didn't. The chair beside his bed stayed empty. And sometimes an empty chair can say more than 1,000 words. Because in that room, one question was asked that would start unraveling everything. Why didn't she come? Not a public question, not a media question, a father's question. And that question, according to this narrative, didn't just bring sadness into the room, it brought the past back with it. Because Samantha Markle was there, watching, listening. And that question, simple and painful, was like a crack in a wall that had been holding secrets for decades. A wall built from silence. From things never discussed, from names never mentioned, from a past that was never supposed to become public conversation. And once a crack appears, the wall doesn't stay strong for long, because that's when an old name started resurfacing again. A name that, according to whispers, had been almost erased from the story. Joe Giuliano. Not a celebrity, not a royal, not a public figure, which makes it even easier for a story to disappear. For nearly 20 years, his name barely appeared anywhere connected to Meghan's public story, almost like a ghost chapter, a missing page, a chapter removed from the book before publication. But people who believe this story say he wasn't just a random boyfriend. They say he was something much more important, part of a chapter that was deliberately buried. And here's where the story becomes explosive. According to this narrative, Meghan met Joe Giuliano in the late 1990s when she was a student at Northwestern University. She was ambitious, driven, determined to enter a world of power, money, and influence. Joe, on the other hand, came from an old money family, a world of status, connections, and elite circles. Two young people, one chasing opportunity, one born into it. And their relationship moved fast, very fast, too fast, some say. And then comes the claim that changes everything. A quiet marriage, around 1999 or 2000. Not a big wedding, not a public wedding, a quiet Las Vegas wedding. The kind of wedding that can happen in a few hours and disappear just as quickly. No press, no big photos, no society announcements, just paperwork. Legal, real, but quiet. And then, just as quickly, the marriage allegedly collapsed. The Giuliano family, according to this story, didn't approve. Questions were asked, motives were questioned, and the marriage was annulled, not divorced, annulled, meaning legally it was as if it never happened. But here's the part that makes this story so dramatic, so controversial, and so impossible to ignore if it were ever proven. Because while a court can erase a marriage, it cannot erase a child. And according to this narrative, around the year 2000, a daughter was born. A daughter who, if this story is true, grew up away from Meghan, raised largely by the Giuliano family, living a life completely separate from the woman who would later become the Duchess of Sussex. Imagine that for a moment. Imagine growing up watching the world praise, admire, and talk about your mother while you remain a secret, not acknowledged. not mentioned, not part of the public story. If this narrative is true, that is not just a secret. That is a lifetime secret. And the story becomes even more complicated because another name appears again, Samantha Markle. According to this version of events, Samantha allegedly helped care for the child at times, acting as a supporting figure in her life, which would mean this wasn't a secret known by one person. It would be a secret known by several people, a secret protected by silence for years, for decades. And here's where the story starts to form a pattern that some critics have pointed out for years, the pattern of relationships. First, Joe Giuliano, old money, elite connections, social status. Then Trevor Engelson, Hollywood producer, industry connections, career access. Then Prince Harry, royalty, global status, international power. Some people say that's coincidence, others say that's strategy. And that debate is exactly why this story is so explosive, because it's not just about a secret child, it's about the idea that Meghan's entire life path was carefully calculated, step by step, relationship by relationship, level by level. With Trevor Engelson, the story is public and confirmed. They dated for years, married in 2011 in Jamaica, and then divorced in 2013 after her career took off with Suits and she moved to Toronto. Distance, career changes, different lives. That's the official explanation. And maybe that's true, but critics who believe the pattern theory say something else. They say once her career reached the next level, the marriage ended. Then came Corey Vidiello, the celebrity chef in Toronto. Another relationship during her Suits era. Another chapter. And then, shortly after that relationship ended, she met Prince Harry. And that's when the world story begins. The royal love story, the interviews, the wedding watched by millions, the titles, the fame, the global platform, the final and biggest level. But if the earlier story were ever proven true, then the fairy tale would suddenly look very different. It would look less like a love story and more like a long game. And now, according to recent claims and speculation, this alleged past is not staying buried anymore. There are claims about old documents, old recordings, even a voicemail allegedly from Joe Giuliano asking for acknowledgement of a child. None of this confirmed by major verified sources, but the existence of the claims alone has been enough to create a storm online. And the biggest question now is not just whether the story is true. The biggest question is this: if Prince Harry recently discovered something he didn't know before, what would that do to a marriage built on trust, on leaving everything behind for love, on choosing one person over an entire royal family? Because if there is one thing that could break a man who already lost his mother, already lost his royal role, already lost his country, already lost his family connections, it would be discovering that the one person he sacrificed everything for had a secret this big. And that is why, according to this narrative, people are now watching Harry very closely. His interviews, his body language, his silence. Because sometimes the biggest scandals are not the ones people shout about, they're the ones people refuse to talk about. And right now, there are a lot of people not talking, which is why this story is not going away. It's just getting started. Because by 2026, something had clearly changed. The image was no longer glowing the way it once did. The interviews felt different. The appearances felt controlled. The smiles looked the same, but the energy around them had shifted. Their brand, their deals, their public image, everything that once looked unstoppable suddenly looked fragile, like a glass structure with a crack running through it that nobody wanted to acknowledge, but everyone could see. And at the center of this storm was not a royal dispute, not a media war, not a business failure, but a person, an alleged daughter, a young woman in her 20s whose existence, if proven true, wouldn't just be a family secret, it would be a global scandal. Because it wouldn't just mean a hidden child, it would mean a hidden marriage, a hidden past, a hidden identity. And the question that would follow would be brutal. If this was hidden, what else was hidden? And this is where the story becomes less about the past and more about the present. Because the real drama is not just whether the secret exists. The real drama is what happens when secrets stop being secrets. That is why people keep coming back to that image. Harry looking quieter, more serious, more withdrawn. Body language experts, royal commentators, insiders, everyone is suddenly analyzing the same thing. His face, his posture, his silence. Because silence can mean many things. It can mean strength. It can mean anger. It can mean confusion. Or it can mean someone is trying to understand how their life changed without them realizing it. But if a major secret existed during all those interviews, during all those documentaries, during all those speeches about truth and transparency, then the public will ask the one question that destroys public figures faster than any scandal. If you hid this, why should we believe anything else? And that question is the real threat. Not the palace, not Samantha, not the media, the public. Because public opinion builds celebrities, and public opinion destroys them. And yet, there is still one more twist in this story that makes it feel almost like a movie. Because some people believe this is not just about the past being exposed, they believe this is about timing. Look at when all of this is happening. Business deals under pressure, media contracts being questioned, public popularity shifting, family tension still unresolved. And right when everything is already fragile, this story appears. Some say it's revenge, some say it's truth finally coming out, some say it's coincidence, some say it's a setup. And that is why this story has become so huge, because nobody agrees on what the truth is, but everyone agrees that something is happening. And now the world is waiting for the interview, waiting for the evidence, waiting for the DNA test, waiting for Harry and Meghan to respond, waiting for the silence to break. Because right now, the silence is louder than any interview. And the biggest question of all still remains unanswered. If this secret is not real, why does it keep coming back? But if this secret is real, how did it stay hidden for so long? And if there really is a young woman out there connected to this story, then this is no longer just a scandal or royal drama or celebrity controversy. It becomes something much bigger. It becomes a story about a hidden past, a carefully built future, and a moment where both are about to collide. And when the past and the present collide like that, the truth doesn't come quietly. It explodes. And the world is now watching very closely to see who gets caught in that explosion.